Have you ever wondered what makes someone choose to be reborn, not just once, but over and over again? In Tibetan Buddhism, the term Tulku refers to exactly that, a remarkable, enlightened being who consciously decides to return to the human world repeatedly. And why, you might ask? To continue their spiritual mission and help others, of course. Unlike general concepts of reincarnation, where rebirth might seem like a mere consequence of karma, something beyond our control, a Tulku's rebirth is a purposeful decision, a profound choice to come back to our realm to benefit all sentient beings. Isn't that inspiring? Tulkus aren't just ordinary beings, they are considered emanations or manifestations of highly realized spiritual masters. Often revered lamas. Imagine that, a master who vows to guide others through countless lifetimes. This concept of Tulku is truly unique to Tibetan Buddhism and stands out from other forms of reincarnation in various Buddhist traditions. For instance, have you heard about the Arhat in Theravada Buddhism? The Arhat focuses on achieving liberation from the endless cycle of birth and death, samsara, and might not necessarily come back to assist others. But Tulkus are different, they embody the Mahayana ideal of the Bodhisattva, those incredible beings who postpone their own enlightenment to help all sentient beings reach liberation. How selfless is that? Recognizing a Tulku isn't just about picking someone at random. It's a meticulous process involving signs, prophecies, and spiritual tests. This practice is deeply woven into Tibetan culture, where spiritual leadership often hinges on these recognized incarnations. Tulkus play an essential role in preserving religious teachings, rituals, and the rich cultural heritage of Tibet. They are, quite literally, the keepers of tradition and wisdom. Isn't that a fascinating responsibility? The significance of Tulku in Tibetan culture and spirituality. Can you imagine a society where spiritual leaders are seen not just as guides, but as living embodiments of wisdom and compassion? In Tibetan culture, that's exactly the role that Tulkus play. They hold an incredibly special place. Revered as divine connections on earth. These remarkable individuals are not just spiritual teachers, they are thought to be direct spiritual successors of highly realized beings, carrying with them the profound wisdom accumulated over countless lifetimes. How awe-inspiring is that? The recognition of a Tulku is a momentous event in Tibetan communities, often bringing a renewed sense of hope and continuity. It's more than just a spiritual occurrence, it's a powerful sign of protection and blessing for everyone involved. Imagine the feeling of knowing that wisdom and guidance from the past continue to support your community, generation after generation. Tulkus lead monasteries, teach invaluable lessons, and perform sacred rituals that are essential for keeping the spiritual and cultural tapestry of Tibetan society vibrant and intact. Aren't they vital to the very soul of the community? But their role doesn't stop there. Tulkus are seen as bridges between the divine and the human realms, mediators who deeply understand the spiritual needs of their followers. They guide their communities towards enlightenment, making them indispensable not only in religious contexts but also as moral and ethical leaders in social and political spheres. Think about it, who better to guide a community than someone believed to have a profound connection to the divine? Development of the Tulku tradition from its early origins to the present. The fascinating tradition of recognizing Tulkus dates back to the 12th century, beginning with the Karmapa lineage, the first formally institutionalized Tulku lineage in Tibetan Buddhism. Picture this, the first Karmapa, Dusam Kyenpa, foreseeing the location and circumstances of his own rebirth before he passed away. This remarkable event set the stage for future reincarnations to be identified in a similar manner. How intriguing is that, as time went on, this tradition spread like wildfire across other Tibetan Buddhist schools, Gelug, Nyingma, Sakya, each developing its own unique methods and criteria for recognizing Tulkus. The Dalai Lama lineage is perhaps the most well-known. Beginning with the recognition of Geduen Drupa as the reincarnation of Gendun Drub, a direct disciple of Tsongkhapa, the founder of the Gelug school. The prominence of this lineage, along with the Panchen Lama line, shows just how vital the Tulku tradition has been, not just spiritually but also politically. It's truly astounding how deeply embedded this practice is within Tibetan Buddhist culture. Of course, as with anything enduring, the Tulku tradition has faced challenges, especially in the modern era with political upheavals and the Tibetan diaspora. But even now, it continues to adapt and evolve, proving its resilience and enduring significance. Isn't it incredible how this ancient practice continues to shape both Tibetan Buddhism and global spiritual contexts today? As we dive deeper into each of these fascinating aspects, let's continue exploring the rich history, spiritual significance, and evolving role of Tulkus. The journey is as enlightening as the destination, too. History and origins of the Tulku tradition, early history of reincarnation concepts and the emergence of the Tulku tradition. Have you ever wondered how the profound idea of reincarnation evolved into something so unique in Tibetan Buddhism? The roots of the Tulku tradition dig deep into the early Buddhist concepts of rebirth and karma, foundational beliefs across all Buddhist schools. But here's the twist: the specific idea of reincarnated lamas who consciously choose to be reborn for the benefit of others? That's something truly special. Unique to the Tibetan Vajrayana Buddhist context, think about it, reincarnation isn't just a Buddhist concept, it dates back even further to early Indian spiritual traditions. But within Buddhism, it's understood through the cycle of samsara, the continuous cycle of birth, death, and rebirth, all driven by karma, the accumulated deeds and intentions from past lives. However, the notion that an enlightened being could actually control their rebirth to continue their spiritual mission is a distinctive and fascinating feature of Tibetan Buddhist thought. Isn't it incredible to think that someone could have such spiritual mastery? The Tulku system began to take shape in Tibet as monasteries were established and Buddhist teachings took root in the region. The translation of Indian Buddhist texts and the arrival of Indian Buddhist scholars from the 8th to 12th centuries played a huge role in shaping Tibetan Buddhism. And it makes sense, right? The idea that enlightened beings could return in physical form to guide and teach their followers became a powerful spiritual force. This concept aligned beautifully with Tibetan cultural values of lineage and continuity. How poetic is that? As Tibetan Buddhism evolved, the Tulku tradition developed organically, influenced by indigenous Tibetan practices like Bon, the pre-Buddhist spiritual tradition of Tibet, and the Mahayana and Vajrayana teachings from India. Imagine a reincarnated lama who returned specifically to continue their spiritual work. This provided a way to ensure the transmission of teachings and leadership within monasteries and spiritual communities. It also reinforced stability and continuity amidst Tibet's rugged, often isolated landscape. Can you see the beauty in that? The role of the Karmapa in establishing the Tulku system in the 12th century. Have you ever wondered who laid the foundation for this incredible tradition? The Karmapa lineage is often credited with formalizing the Tulku tradition in the 12th century, marking the start of a systematic approach to recognizing reincarnated spiritual leaders. The first Karmapa, Dusam Kyenpa, 1110 to 1193, was a major figure in the Karma Kagyu school, one of Tibetan Buddhism's four major schools. Imagine him, before his death, leaving precise instructions about where and when he would be reborn. This foresight set the stage for identifying his reincarnation. How amazing is that, following Dusam Kyenpa's instructions, the second Karmapa, Karmapakshi, 1204 to 1283, was recognized, establishing a model for other lineages to follow. He is remembered not only for his spiritual accomplishments but also for being the first officially recognized reincarnated lama, making him a pivotal figure in the Tulku tradition. It's quite something, isn't it, to think about how one man's vision shaped such a lasting spiritual practice. The Karma Kagyu school further refined the recognition and enthronement of subsequent Karmapa, turning the process into a formal institution. This careful practice ensured that the spiritual authority and teachings of the Karmapa could be passed down through generations, maintaining continuity and stability within the school. Over time, this system spread to other Tibetan Buddhist schools, each adapting it to fit their needs. The success of the Karmapa lineage in maintaining spiritual and administrative continuity likely inspired other schools to adopt similar practices. Don't you find it fascinating how one idea can ripple out and influence an entire culture? Expansion and adaptation of the Tulku tradition across different Tibetan Buddhist schools. As the practice of recognizing reincarnated lamas grew in popularity, other major Tibetan Buddhist schools started adopting the Tulku system to ensure their teachings and spiritual leadership continued. Each school developed its own methods and criteria for identifying Tulkus, reflecting the rich diversity of Tibetan Buddhist practice and philosophy. Take the Gelug school, for example, founded by Je Tsongkhapa, 1357–1419. It's probably best known for recognizing the Dalai Lama and Panchen Lama lineages. Initially, the first Dalai Lama, Geduen Drupa, 1391–1474, wasn't recognized as a reincarnation during his lifetime. But after his death, the Gelug school began the tradition of recognizing his reincarnations, which eventually became the institutionalized Dalai Lama lineage. And look at how influential this lineage has become, playing significant roles in both the spiritual and political life of Tibet. Isn't it incredible how these traditions evolve? The Nyingma school, the oldest of the four major Tibetan Buddhist schools, also embraced the Tulku tradition, but with its unique twist. The Nyingma tradition places a strong emphasis on terma, hidden teachings believed to be discovered by tertons, or treasure revealers. These tertons are often considered reincarnations of past masters, and finding terma is seen as evidence of their spiritual lineage. How mystical and captivating is that? Then there's the Sakya school, founded in the 11th century. Initially, they resisted the Tulku system, preferring a hereditary succession model within the Khan family lineage. But eventually, the school incorporated the Tulku tradition, recognizing reincarnated lamas alongside its hereditary leaders. This adaptation allowed the Sakya school to blend the Tulku system with its unique traditions, preserving its distinct identity while also embracing the broader Tibetan Buddhist practice. It's like having the best of both worlds, don't you think? Over time, the Tulku tradition became a cornerstone of Tibetan Buddhism, deeply influencing its structure and practices. The recognition of Tulkus provided a way for each school to maintain continuity and legitimacy, ensuring that teachings and spiritual authority could be passed down through generations. And as Tibetan Buddhism spread beyond Tibet to places like Mongolia, Bhutan, Nepal, and eventually the West, the Tulku tradition continued to evolve, adapting to new cultural contexts and audiences. Isn't it remarkable how such an ancient practice still holds relevance today, navigating the challenges of the modern world? 3. The process of searching for and recognizing a Tulku, signs, prophecies, and the presence of a new Tulku. Have you ever wondered how a community might find its next spiritual leader after the passing of a revered Lama? The process of recognizing a Tulku is a fascinating journey that begins with the death of a highly realized Lama, whose followers believe will be reborn to continue their spiritual mission. This isn't just a simple search, it's a meticulous process filled with mystery, faith, and spiritual insight. Imagine being part of a journey that relies on a combination of spiritual signs, prophecies, and traditional tests to find the true reincarnation. How captivating! One of the first steps in this sacred process is looking for signs and omens that may suggest the presence of a new Tulku. These signs can appear in many forms: unusual natural phenomena like rainbows, the spontaneous blooming of flowers, or even miraculous dreams experienced by disciples. Can you picture the excitement and awe when such signs appear? It's believed that these miraculous occurrences indicate the rebirth of the Lama. For instance, after the death of a Lama, if a rainbow suddenly appears in the sky or flowers bloom unexpectedly, it's seen as a powerful sign that a new Tulku has been born. Isn't that magical? Sometimes, the deceased Lama leaves specific instructions or prophecies about their rebirth, including details about the location, family, and even the physical characteristics of the child in which they will reincarnate. These prophecies are often closely guarded secrets, known only to a few senior disciples or close associates. This adds an extra layer of intrigue and reverence to the search, doesn't it? A fascinating example of this is the recognition of the 14th Dalai Lama, Tenzin Gyatso. After the death of the 13th Dalai Lama, Thubten Gyatso, the Tibetan government and senior lamas embarked on an incredible journey, guided by prophecies and signs left by the 13th Dalai Lama. Can you imagine the intensity of that search? They traveled across Tibet, following clues until they reached the Amdo region, where they found a young boy who matched the prophecy's description. This boy was eventually recognized as the 14th Dalai Lama after successfully undergoing a series of tests, including recognizing objects belonging to the previous Dalai Lama. Isn't it amazing how these ancient practices continue to shape leadership in Tibetan Buddhism, traditional methods for recognizing a Tulku, from tests to involvement of senior lamas? Once a potential Tulku candidate is identified based on signs and prophecies, the process moves into a more structured phase with traditional tests. These aren't just any tests, they are deeply spiritual and profoundly significant, designed to confirm the candidate's identity as the true reincarnation of the previous Lama. One of the most intriguing tests involves presenting the child with various objects, some belonging to the deceased Lama and some that do not. The child is then asked to identify which objects were theirs in their past life. Imagine the sense of wonder and anticipation as everyone watches to see if the child can correctly identify these objects. If the child does, it's considered a strong indication that they are indeed the reincarnated Lama. Isn't that incredible? But it doesn't stop there. The child may also be asked to demonstrate their knowledge of the teachings and practices of the previous Lama, like reciting specific prayers or chanting mantras. Their behavior, demeanor, and general conduct are also closely observed to see if they exhibit the qualities of the past Lama. It's a comprehensive process that leaves no stone unturned. The involvement of senior lamas and religious authorities is crucial in this process. A committee of high-ranking lamas, often from different monastic traditions, is usually formed to oversee the recognition. Their spiritual insight, knowledge of Buddhist teachings, and understanding of the deceased Lama's lineage ensure the recognition is handled with the utmost care and integrity. Isn't it reassuring to know such care is taken in this sacred task? The Nechung Oracle, a state oracle of Tibet, may also play a role in providing spiritual guidance. Can you imagine consulting an oracle for advice in this process? The Nechung Oracle is considered an earthly representative of a protective deity and is often consulted, especially in cases of uncertainty or controversy, adding another layer of spiritual depth to the search. Specific stories about the discovery and recognition of famous Tulkus. Throughout Tibetan Buddhism's rich history, there are numerous captivating stories about the discovery and recognition of Tulkus. These tales not only highlight the spiritual dimensions of this tradition but also reflect the cultural and historical contexts in which they happened. Take the discovery of the 16th Karmapa, Rangyung Rigpi Dorje. After the death of the 15th Karmapa, Kakyab Dorje, in 1922, a search party was dispatched based on prophecies and signs. They traveled to the Dorje region of eastern Tibet, where they found a young boy exhibiting extraordinary qualities matching the 15th Karmapa's descriptions. This boy, who could identify belongings of the previous Karmapa and demonstrated an advanced understanding of Buddhist teachings, was recognized as the 16th Karmapa. Imagine the joy and relief of the search party when they found him. He went on to become one of the most influential Tibetan Buddhist leaders of the 20th century, spreading Buddhism to the West. What an inspiring story. Then there's the recognition of the 11th Panchen Lama, a tale filled with controversy and political tension. After the death of the 10th Panchen Lama, Chokyi Gyaltsen, in 1989, the search began under the guidance of the Dalai Lama and the Tashil Hunpo Monastery. The Dalai Lama recognized a young boy, Gedhun Chochi Nyama, as the 11th Panchen Lama. However, the Chinese government did not accept this recognition and instead appointed another child, Jayantkain Norbu, leading to a significant split within the Tibetan Buddhist community. The original Panchen Lama, Gedhun Chochi Nyama, was taken into custody by Chinese authorities, and his whereabouts remain unknown. This story underscores the profound political challenges and sensitivities that can surround Tulku recognition. It's a powerful reminder of how intertwined spirituality and politics can be. And of course, we have the story of the 14th Dalai Lama. Recognized through a combination of prophecies, signs, and rigorous tests, his recognition was crucial for the Gelug school's continuity and Tibet's leadership. His escape to India in 1959, following the Chinese invasion, and his role as a global spiritual leader and advocate for Tibetan autonomy, show just how impactful recognized Tulkus can be beyond the religious sphere. It's astounding how one individual can embody such profound spiritual and political significance. Don't you think? These stories are just a glimpse into the rich tapestry of spiritual, cultural, and political elements that converge in the Tulku recognition process. Each recognition is a unique event that not only reflects the enduring traditions of Tibetan Buddhism but also its remarkable ability to adapt to changing circumstances while maintaining its spiritual integrity. 4. Life and education of a Tulku, monastic environment and training programs for a Tulku. Can you imagine being recognized as a spiritual leader at such a young age? After a Tulku is identified and enthroned, their journey truly begins in a monastery, a place that becomes both their home and their school. This is where they embark on a rigorous education and training program, carefully designed to cultivate the intellectual and spiritual qualities they need to fulfill their role as a spiritual leader and teacher. How incredible is that? The monastic environment is like no other. It provides a structured and disciplined setting where the young Tulku dives deep into Buddhist philosophy, ritual practices, and meditation techniques. Picture them studying ancient Buddhist scriptures, like the Kangyur, the translated words of the Buddha, and the Tenjir, commentaries by Indian and Tibetan scholars, and learning the classical Tibetan language to understand these profound texts. Can you imagine the dedication and commitment required for this kind of study? But it's not just about academic learning. The training of a Tulku emphasizes moral discipline and ethical conduct as well. Tulkus are expected to adhere to the monastic code, which includes vows of celibacy, nonviolence, and renunciation of material possessions. This discipline is crucial for developing the qualities of compassion, patience, and wisdom, qualities that are at the heart of what it means to be a Tulku. It's a path that demands so much more than intellectual rigor. It requires a deep commitment to spiritual principles. How admirable is that? Meditation is another cornerstone of a Tulku's training. Through meditation, Tulkus develop concentration, mindfulness, and insight, skills that are essential for deepening their spiritual understanding and realizing the ultimate nature of reality as taught in Buddhist philosophy. Can you imagine the depth of connection and understanding a Tulku must develop through this practice? Even reaching back to the wisdom of their previous incarnations? It's like tapping into a profound, timeless well of knowledge and experience. Guidance from senior lamas or teachers is vital in this journey. These mentors, well-versed in the specific lineage and teachings of the Tulku's tradition, offer personalized instruction and spiritual guidance. They are there to nurture the Tulku's growth, helping them develop both spiritually and intellectually. What a beautiful relationship of learning and mentorship that must be. The developmental stages of a Tulku from recognition to adulthood. The path of a Tulku from recognition to adulthood is filled with milestones and challenges, each stage preparing them for their ultimate role as a spiritual leader and teacher. Imagine the excitement, confusion, and sense of responsibility they must feel as they step into this journey. The first stage is the initial recognition and enthronement of the Tulku, often happening in early childhood. At this stage, the young Tulku is introduced to their new identity, and with it, a whole world of expectations and responsibilities. Can you imagine being so young and having to adapt to a new environment and lifestyle, often far from your biological family? It's a time of immense change but also one of wonder and discovery, as the Tulku begins to explore their spiritual heritage and connect with their monastic community. Next comes the stage of basic education and training. This is where the Tulku begins their formal education in Buddhist philosophy, language, and ritual practices. It's a time of intense study, memorization, and the development of foundational meditation skills. It's about learning discipline and focus, qualities essential for their spiritual growth. What a rigorous and demanding stage of life this must be. As the Tulku matures, they enter the stage of advanced study and practice. This is where things get even more challenging and enriching. The Tulku engages in more complex areas of study, like tantric practices and advanced meditation techniques. They might spend long periods in retreat, deepening their meditation practice and gaining direct experiential knowledge of Buddhist teachings. Can you imagine the depth of understanding and insight they achieve during this time? The Tulku may also start to take on more responsibilities, teaching younger monks or leading rituals. It's a time of profound growth and preparation for their future leadership role. Finally, there's the stage of maturity and leadership, where the Tulku steps into their full role as a spiritual leader and teacher. This typically occurs in early adulthood, after completing their formal education and training. Now, the Tulku is expected to guide their community, uphold the teachings of their lineage, and contribute to the preservation and dissemination of Tibetan Buddhist teachings. It's a role that requires them to balance their personal spiritual practice with their duties as a leader. Imagine the complexity of navigating such diverse responsibilities while staying true to their spiritual path. The role of Tulkus in preserving and developing Buddhist teachings and leading spiritual communities. Tulkus hold a vital place in preserving and developing Buddhist teachings. They are not just teachers, they are custodians of their lineages and traditions, ensuring that the purity of the teachings is maintained and accurately transmitted to future generations. Their role is about more than just passing on knowledge. It's about embodying the core principles of Buddhism, such as compassion, wisdom, and ethical conduct. Can you feel the weight of that responsibility? In their communities, Tulkus are revered as spiritual leaders, providing guidance and support to both monastic and lay practitioners. Their very presence is believed to bring blessings and protection. They are often called upon to perform important rituals, lead meditation retreats, and offer spiritual advice and counseling. Imagine the profound impact they have on their communities, serving as living examples of the Buddhist path. Beyond their spiritual roles, Tulkus have often served as cultural and political leaders. Historically, they were involved in governance and diplomacy, acting as intermediaries and negotiating with foreign powers. Even today, many Tulkus engage with social and political issues, advocating for the rights and welfare of their communities. It's incredible to think about how they balance these roles, don't you think? Tulkus are also key in the ongoing adaptation and evolution of Tibetan Buddhism. They are often at the forefront of efforts to reinterpret and renew Buddhist teachings, making them relevant for contemporary life. This might involve engaging with modern science and philosophy, addressing social and environmental issues, or finding new ways to connect with younger generations of Buddhists worldwide. Isn't it inspiring to see how they ensure that Buddhism remains a living tradition, responsive to the needs of today? By fulfilling these diverse roles, Tulkus help keep Tibetan Buddhism vibrant and relevant, preserving its rich spiritual heritage while also fostering growth and adaptation. Their work as teachers, leaders, and innovators is essential for maintaining the relevance and accessibility of Buddhist teachings in the modern world. It's a testament to their dedication and wisdom, ensuring that the light of Buddhism continues to shine brightly for all who seek its guidance. 5. Famous Tulku stories in Tibetan Buddhist history, stories of the Karmapa, discovery and contributions of each Karmapa. The Karmapa lineage is one of the oldest and most revered Tulku lineages in Tibetan Buddhism, tracing its roots all the way back to the 12th century. Can you imagine a lineage so ancient, with each Karmapa believed to be the reincarnation of the previous one? These incredible figures carry forward the teachings and spiritual mission of the Karma Kagyu school, and their stories are full of miraculous events, deep spiritual insights, and profound contributions to Buddhism. Let's dive into the fascinating lives of these spiritual leaders. The first Karmapa, Dusam Kyenpa, 1110 to 1193. The story begins with Dusam Kyenpa, the first Karmapa and a disciple of the great Tibetan yogi and teacher Gampopa. From a young age, Dusam Kyenpa exhibited exceptional spiritual qualities, quickly rising to prominence within the Kagyu tradition. Imagine being recognized for your spiritual depth and insight from such an early age. He is renowned for his deep meditative practice, teachings on the nature of mind, and his foundational role in establishing the Karma Kagyu lineage. Before his passing, Dusum Kyenpa left instructions about his next rebirth, setting the stage for the Tulku tradition within the Kagyu school. How amazing is that? The second Karmapa, Karmapakshi, 1204–1283, one of the most beloved and well-known Karmapa, Karmapakshi, is remembered for his miraculous powers and his expansive travels that spread Buddhism far beyond Tibet. As a child, he displayed extraordinary abilities. Can you imagine recalling past lives and performing miraculous feats? His recognition as the second Karmapa helped solidify the practice of identifying reincarnated lamas within the Karma Kagyu lineage. His journeys took him to the courts of Mongolia and China, where he significantly influenced the spread of Buddhism, even converting many to the Buddhist path. Isn't it incredible to think about how one person's presence could inspire such widespread spiritual awakening? The third Karmapa, Rangyung Dorje, 1284–1339, recognized as the third Karmapa from a young age, Rangyung Dorje made remarkable contributions to Tibetan Buddhist philosophy. His deep understanding of both the sutras and tantras led him to write many important texts, including commentaries on Mahamudra, a core meditation practice in the Kagyu school. He also composed several ritual texts still used in Kagyu monasteries today. Can you imagine creating works that continue to guide spiritual practice centuries later? His efforts laid a solid foundation for the further development of the Karma Kagyu teachings and practices. The 16th Karmapa, Rangyung Rigpa Dorje, 1924–1981, perhaps the most famous Karmapa in recent history. The 16th Karmapa is known for his efforts to spread Tibetan Buddhism to the West. After the Chinese invasion of Tibet in 1959, he fled to India, where he established Rumtek Monastery in Sikkim as the new seat of the Karma Kagyu lineage. Throughout the 1960s and 1970s, he traveled extensively in Europe and North America, founding Dharma centers and inspiring a new generation of Western students. Imagine being a spiritual bridge between East and West, bringing ancient wisdom to new audiences. His teachings emphasize the universality of Buddhist principles and the importance of meditation, helping lay the groundwork for the global spread of Tibetan Buddhism. Each Karmapa has left a unique mark on the Karma Kagyu tradition, contributing to its spiritual and institutional development. Their stories illustrate the continuity of the Tulku lineage and the enduring impact of the Karmapa on Tibetan Buddhism and beyond. It's awe-inspiring to see how each Karmapa's life story has shaped the spiritual landscape of their time and continues to influence practitioners today. The Dalai Lamas. The journey of each Dalai Lama from the 1st to the 14th, the Dalai Lama lineage is perhaps the most prominent and influential Tulku lineage in Tibetan Buddhism, especially within the Gelug school. Imagine being seen as a manifestation of Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva of compassion. The Dalai Lamas have played crucial roles not only in the spiritual but also the political life of Tibet. And their stories are full of dedication, leadership, and resilience. The first Dalai Lama, Geduen Drupa, 1391–1474. Geduen Drupa was a disciple of Tsongkhapa, the founder of the Gelug school. While the title Dalai Lama was not used during his lifetime, Geduen Drupa is considered the first in this line due to his significant role in establishing the Gelug tradition and being recognized as a reincarnated Lama. He founded Tashil Hunpo Monastery in Shigatse, which became a key center for the Gelug school. Can you imagine laying the foundation for such an influential spiritual tradition? The third Dalai Lama, Sonam Gyatso, 1543–1588. Sonam Gyatso was the first to receive the title Dalai Lama, which means Ocean of Wisdom, from the Mongol ruler Ultan Khan. This title was then retroactively applied to his predecessors. Sonam Gyatso strengthened the Gelug school's influence and forged important alliances with Mongol rulers, who became key patrons of Tibetan Buddhism. It's remarkable to think about how these alliances helped to elevate the Dalai Lama's status as both a spiritual and political figure in Tibet. The fifth Dalai Lama, Nawang Lobsang Gyatso, 1617 to 1682, known as the Great Fifth, Nawang Lobsang Gyatso was a transformative figure in Tibetan history. Under his leadership, the Gelug school consolidated its power, and the Dalai Lama became the political ruler of Tibet. He is credited with unifying Tibet under the central authority of the Gelug school and establishing the Potala Palace in Lhasa as the seat of the Dalai Lama. His reign marked the beginning of a theocratic government in Tibet. Imagine the vision and leadership it took to unify an entire nation under spiritual guidance. The 13th Dalai Lama, Thubten Gyatso, 1876 to 1933. Thubten Gyatso was a reformer and modernizer who sought to strengthen Tibet's independence amid the changing political landscape of the early 20th century. He implemented several reforms in the Tibetan government and military, aiming to modernize Tibet in response to external threats. His efforts laid the groundwork for the challenges faced by his successor. Isn't it fascinating to see how his leadership shaped Tibet's resilience and adaptability? The 14th Dalai Lama, Tenzin Gyatso, 1935, present. The current Dalai Lama, Tenzin Gyatso, has become a global spiritual leader and advocate for non-violence and human rights. After the Chinese invasion of Tibet and the subsequent uprising, he fled to India, where he established a government in exile. His tireless work to preserve Tibetan culture and Buddhism, promote interfaith dialogue, and advocate for compassion and ethical conduct has earned him international acclaim, including the Nobel Peace Prize in 1989. Imagine carrying such a profound responsibility for your people while also serving as a beacon of hope and compassion worldwide. Each Dalai Lama has played a significant role in shaping the history and spiritual landscape of Tibet. Their stories reflect the evolution of Tibetan Buddhism and its adaptation to changing historical circumstances, showing how deeply interconnected spirituality and leadership can be. Other Tulkus such as Jamgon Kongtrul, Pabongka Rinpoche, and other notable Tulkus, beyond the Karmapa and Dalai Lama lineages, many other notable Tulkus have made significant contributions to Tibetan Buddhism, each bringing their unique qualities and insights to the tradition. Let's explore some of their remarkable stories. Jamgon Kongtrul Lodro Thay, 1813 to 1899, a prolific scholar, teacher, and meditation master. Jamgon Kongtrul was associated with the Rime, non-sectarian, movement in Tibetan Buddhism. Born in eastern Tibet, he became a leading figure in promoting unity among the different Tibetan Buddhist schools by emphasizing their shared teachings and practices. Can you imagine the vision it took to encourage such inclusivity in a time of sectarian divisions? Kongtrul authored over 100 volumes of texts, covering a wide range of subjects from philosophy to medicine, ensuring that valuable teachings from various lineages were preserved and celebrated. Pabongka Rinpoche, 1878 to 1941, a highly influential Lama of the Gelug school, Pabongka Rinpoche was known for his powerful teachings on Lamrim, the stages of the path to enlightenment. His teachings have become a cornerstone of Gelug practice, deeply influencing practitioners to this day. Imagine the impact of his teachings, which continue to guide countless students on their spiritual journeys. He also played a key role in reviving the practice of Vajrayana Buddhism within the Gelug school, emphasizing the importance of both Sutra and Tantra practices. Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche, 1910 to 1991, a renowned master of the Nyingma school, Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche was a central figure in the transmission of Tibetan Buddhism to the West. Recognized as a Tulku at a young age, he trained under some of the greatest lamas of his time. His vast knowledge, deep meditation experience, and profound compassion left a lasting impact on all who met him. After fleeing Tibet following the Chinese invasion, he continued to teach and write extensively in Bhutan, spreading Buddhism internationally. His efforts to preserve the Nyingma teachings and spread them globally have had an enduring impact on the Buddhist community worldwide. Isn't it inspiring to see how his life's work has touched so many across the globe? These Tulkus, along with many others, have played essential roles in preserving, adapting, and spreading Tibetan Buddhism. Each has contributed uniquely to the spiritual richness and diversity of the tradition, ensuring its vitality and relevance in today's world. 6. Role of Tulkus in modern Tibetan society. changing roles of Tulkus in the context of modern Tibet and globalization. Can you imagine being a spiritual leader in a world that is constantly changing? The role of Tulkus has evolved significantly over the years, adapting to the social, political, and cultural shifts that have shaped modern Tibet and the global stage. With the Chinese occupation of Tibet in the 1950s, the Tibetan diaspora, and the globalization of Tibetan Buddhism, Tulkus have found themselves navigating a new landscape, one that requires them to be both traditional guardians of the Dharma and modern-day leaders. Traditionally, Tulkus were seen as spiritual beacons, guiding their communities in religious practice and upholding the teachings of their lineages. They often held significant political power, acting as intermediaries between the Tibetan government and the people, or even governing territories themselves. However, the Chinese invasion and subsequent repression dramatically reduced their influence within Tibet. Imagine the challenges they faced, having to adapt to a world where their spiritual and political roles were so tightly controlled. Many Tulkus fled Tibet, seeking refuge in India and other countries, where they had to start anew. In these foreign lands, they established new monasteries and communities, becoming cultural ambassadors and advocates for human rights. Isn't it inspiring how they transformed adversity into an opportunity to share their wisdom and culture with the world? The spread of Tibetan Buddhism to the West opened even more doors, allowing Tulkus to engage with global audiences and address contemporary issues like environmentalism, mental health, and social justice. They became voices for a more compassionate and mindful world, bridging ancient traditions with modern concerns. Despite these changes, Tulkus remain vital in preserving Tibetan culture and spiritual traditions. They are seen as custodians of Tibetan identity, especially in the diaspora, where they work tirelessly to maintain the continuity of Buddhist teachings while also making them relevant to today's audiences. Isn't it remarkable how they balance holding on to their roots while reaching out to the world? Challenges Tulkus face in the 21st century, including political, cultural, and religious issues. Navigating the modern world is no small feat for Tulkus. They face a complex landscape filled with political, cultural, and religious challenges, each requiring a delicate balance of tradition and adaptation. Political challenges. The tension between the Chinese government and the Tibetan Buddhist community remains a significant issue. Imagine trying to practice your faith under strict governmental control. The recognition of Tulkus has become highly politicized, as seen with the controversial recognition of the 11th Panchen Lama. The Chinese government's interference in the recognition process, often appointing Tulkus aligned with their political agenda, has caused deep divisions within the Tibetan community. How frustrating and disheartening it must be to see such sacred traditions entangled in political disputes, cultural challenges. As Tibetan Buddhism spreads worldwide, Tulkus must also navigate cultural differences and adapt their teachings to resonate with diverse audiences. This requires a careful balance between honoring traditional practices and addressing contemporary concerns, such as integrating insights from science into meditation practices or addressing social justice from a Buddhist perspective. How do they manage to stay true to their roots while engaging with a global audience that has varying levels of familiarity with Buddhism? Religious challenges. Within the Tibetan Buddhist community itself, there are ongoing debates about the authenticity and legitimacy of certain Tulkus, especially when multiple candidates claim to be the reincarnation of the same Lama. These disputes can create divisions and pose challenges to unity and continuity within the tradition. Furthermore, as more Westerners become involved in Tibetan Buddhism, questions arise about the integration of non-Tibetan Tulkus and their roles within traditional lineages. Isn't it intriguing to think about how a centuries-old tradition continues to evolve and adapt in such a dynamic way? Despite these challenges, many Tulkus have adapted remarkably well to the modern world. They use their platforms to promote values like compassion, mindfulness, and ethical living, serving as spiritual guides who bridge ancient wisdom with contemporary life. It's inspiring to see how they navigate these complexities with grace and wisdom, don't you think? How Tulkus adapt to the digital age and the spread of Tibetan Buddhism worldwide. The digital age has brought both exciting opportunities and unique challenges for Tulkus. Can you imagine having the ability to reach a global audience at the click of a button? Many Tulkus have embraced technology to share teachings, conduct online retreats, and engage with followers from all over the world. This has allowed them to extend their reach far beyond the walls of traditional monasteries, connecting with people who might not have access to a local Tibetan Buddhist center. Isn't it amazing how technology can help preserve and spread ancient wisdom? Through online platforms, Tulkus can offer teachings in multiple languages, making Tibetan Buddhism accessible to a diverse audience. They can address contemporary issues, providing Buddhist perspectives on climate change, mental health, and social justice. This engagement helps keep Tibetan Buddhism relevant and responsive to the needs of modern practitioners. Imagine being able to receive guidance from a Tulku directly, no matter where you are in the world. However, the digital age also presents challenges. The spread of misinformation and the commodification of spiritual teachings can dilute the depth and authenticity of Tibetan Buddhism. Tulkus must navigate these challenges carefully, ensuring that their teachings remain true to the core principles of their tradition while being accessible and engaging for a modern audience. Isn't it a delicate balance to maintain authenticity in such a rapidly evolving digital landscape? The rise of virtual monasteries is another fascinating development, where people can engage in collective practice and receive teachings online. This innovation has allowed Tibetan Buddhism to adapt to the modern world, providing a space for those who cannot participate in traditional monastic life. It also offers a unique opportunity for Tulkus to connect with younger generations who are more accustomed to digital communication. How incredible is it that these ancient teachings continue to find new ways to thrive in today's world? Overall, Tulkus play a crucial role in adapting Tibetan Buddhism to the digital age, ensuring its continued relevance and accessibility. They continue to innovate and find new ways to engage with their followers, reflecting the dynamic and evolving nature of the Tulku tradition. Isn't it inspiring to see how they keep the flame of Tibetan Buddhism burning brightly, even in the face of modern challenges? 7. Controversies and challenges within the Tulku tradition, issues of recognition and legitimacy of certain Tulkus. The recognition of Tulkus has long been a source of both spiritual continuity and intense debate within Tibetan Buddhism. Imagine the challenges that come with identifying a reincarnated Lama based on interpreting signs, prophecies, and sometimes ambiguous criteria. These practices, which are so deeply rooted in tradition, can easily lead to disputes over the legitimacy of certain Tulkus, especially in today's complex world where political, social, and even international dynamics add layers of complexity. One of the most controversial cases involves the recognition of the 11th Panchen Lama. After the death of the 10th Panchen Lama, Chokyi Gyaltsen, in 1989, the search for his reincarnation turned into a highly politicized issue. In 1995, the Dalai Lama recognized a young boy named Gedhun Chochi Nyama as the 11th Panchen Lama. But can you imagine the shock when the Chinese government rejected this recognition and instead appointed their own candidate, Gyaltsen Norbu? Gedhun Chochi Nyama was then taken into custody by Chinese authorities, and his whereabouts have remained a mystery ever since. This has caused a significant split within the Tibetan community, with some recognizing Gedhun Chochi Nyama as the legitimate Panchen Lama, while others, particularly those in Chinese-controlled areas, acknowledge Gyaltsen Norbu. What a heartbreaking situation, torn between spiritual beliefs and political control. Similar controversies have arisen with other high-profile Tulkus. Often, these disagreements come from different interpretations of prophecies and signs, political influences, and divergent views on spiritual authority within various Buddhist schools. These disputes can create rifts within the Tibetan Buddhist community, challenging the unity and coherence of spiritual leadership. How difficult it must be to navigate these turbulent waters, trying to keep faith and tradition intact. The process of recognizing Tulkus has also been criticized for being susceptible to manipulation and favoritism. Some argue that political and economic considerations sometimes overshadow spiritual criteria, casting doubt on the authenticity of certain recognitions. These concerns are especially pressing when multiple candidates claim to be the reincarnation of the same Lama, leading to rival factions within the same school or lineage. Isn't it challenging to think about how such a sacred tradition can be mired in worldly concerns, controversies surrounding reincarnation and notable events? Reincarnation is a cornerstone of the Tulku tradition, but it's also a topic of philosophical debate and controversy. Some within the Tibetan Buddhist community question the heavy emphasis on reincarnation, arguing that it may overshadow other critical aspects of Buddhist practice, such as personal realization and ethical conduct. This perspective is more common among younger generations of Tibetans and Western Buddhists who might not fully understand or accept the traditional beliefs surrounding reincarnation. Can you imagine the tension between preserving ancient traditions and adapting to contemporary beliefs? Additionally, the concept of consciously choosing one's rebirth challenges conventional understandings of karma and the cycle of samsara, where beings are typically reborn based on their karmic actions rather than a deliberate choice. This has sparked debates within the broader Buddhist community about the theological and doctrinal foundations of the Tulku system. Isn't it fascinating to see how these ancient beliefs continue to provoke such deep questions and discussions? Another notable controversy involves the recognition of the 17th Karmapa. After the death of the 16th Karmapa, Rangyung Rigpa Dorje, in 1981, two separate candidates were recognized as his reincarnation, Ogyen Trinley Dorje and Trinley Thay Dorje. Both were recognized by different factions within the Karma Kagyu school, leading to a schism that persists to this day. Imagine the complexity of having two spiritual leaders, each with their own following and administrative structure, both claiming to be the legitimate reincarnation of the same Lama. This dual recognition has created significant tension and division within the Karma Kagyu school, highlighting the complexities and challenges of maintaining unity amidst divergent spiritual claims. These controversies reflect broader questions about the role of the Tulku tradition in contemporary Tibetan Buddhism. As Tibetan Buddhism continues to adapt to modern contexts, both within Tibet and in the global diaspora, there's an ongoing need to re-examine and refine the traditional methods and criteria for recognizing Tulkus. How do we balance respect for ancient traditions with the evolving needs and understandings of a global community? Challenges in maintaining the purity of tradition amidst cultural and social changes. Maintaining the purity and integrity of the Tulku tradition amidst rapid cultural and social changes is no easy task. With the Tibetan diaspora, the global spread of Buddhism, and the rise of modernity, how can this tradition adapt while staying true to its roots? One of the primary challenges is balancing the preservation of traditional practices with the need to adapt to new cultural contexts. Many Tibetan Buddhists living in the West or in exile face the difficult task of maintaining their spiritual heritage while integrating into societies with different cultural norms and values. This has sparked debates about which aspects of the Tulku tradition are essential and must be preserved, and which can be adapted or reinterpreted in light of contemporary realities. Can you imagine the struggle of holding on to your heritage while trying to fit into a new world? Another challenge is the rise of skepticism and secularism, both within and outside the Tibetan community. As more people, particularly in the West, approach Buddhism from a secular or non-religious perspective, there is growing skepticism about traditional beliefs in reincarnation and the supernatural elements associated with the Tulku tradition. This skepticism has led to calls for a more rational and evidence-based approach to Buddhist practice, sometimes clashing with traditional Tibetan views. How do you reconcile ancient wisdom with modern skepticism? Additionally, there are concerns about the commodification of the Tulku tradition in the modern world. With the increasing popularity of Tibetan Buddhism in the West, there's a market for spiritual teachings and practices, leading some to accuse certain lamas and institutions of commercializing the tradition for financial gain. This commercialization can dilute the spiritual depth of the tradition and lead to a superficial understanding of the Tulku system. Isn't it troubling to think that something so sacred could be reduced to a commodity? To address these challenges, many within the Tibetan Buddhist community are calling for a renewed emphasis on ethical conduct, personal realization, and the core teachings of Buddhism. By focusing on the fundamental principles of compassion, wisdom, and ethical behavior, the Tulku tradition can maintain its relevance and integrity in a rapidly changing world. It's inspiring to see how they strive to keep the essence of their teachings alive, even in the face of modern challenges. 8. Spiritual and philosophical significance of Tulkus, perspectives on reincarnation and karma in Tibetan Buddhist philosophy. In Tibetan Buddhism, reincarnation and karma are central to understanding the Tulku tradition. Reincarnation isn't just a cycle of birth and rebirth, it's seen as a profound opportunity for spiritual growth and realization. Imagine the depth of commitment required to return to the world, lifetime after lifetime, out of compassion for all sentient beings. This perspective is deeply rooted in the Mahayana Buddhist belief in samsara, the cycle of birth and death, and nirvana, liberation from this cycle. With Tulkus embodying the ideal of the bodhisattva who returns to the world out of compassion, the belief that a realized master can consciously choose their next rebirth is based on the understanding that such beings have transcended ordinary karmic limitations. By choosing to be reborn, Tulkus are seen as voluntarily taking on the suffering of samsara to continue their spiritual mission. This act is viewed as an expression of bodhicitta, the compassionate wish to attain enlightenment for the sake of all beings. Isn't it inspiring to think about this level of selflessness and dedication? From a philosophical perspective, Tulkus represent the Mahayana ideal of selfless service and the interconnectedness of all life. The idea that Tulkus can choose their rebirth challenges the notion of karma as a purely deterministic force, suggesting instead that advanced practitioners have the capacity to transcend ordinary karmic constraints. This view emphasizes the transformative power of spiritual practice and the potential for individuals to shape their own destiny through wisdom and compassion. What a powerful reminder of the potential within all of us. Debates and controversies surrounding the concept of Tulku in different Buddhist schools. While the Tulku tradition is a cornerstone of Tibetan Buddhism, it's not universally accepted or understood in the same way across all Buddhist schools. Within Tibetan Buddhism, there are different interpretations and practices regarding the recognition and role of Tulkus, leading to debates about the tradition's doctrinal and philosophical foundations. Some schools, like the Nyingma and Kagyu, emphasize the spontaneous and natural recognition of Tulkus based on spiritual signs and prophecies. These schools often have a more flexible approach, allowing for multiple candidates to be recognized as reincarnations of the same Lama in different contexts. Can you imagine the diversity this brings to the tradition? In contrast, the Gelug school, with its more structured and institutionalized approach, often relies on formal procedures and examinations to ensure authenticity. These differing approaches can lead to debates about the role of Tulkus within the broader Buddhist tradition and how best to preserve the core teachings of Buddhism. While Tulkus are often seen as manifestations of bodhisattvas, some argue that the emphasis on reincarnation and lineage can overshadow the core Buddhist teachings of impermanence, non-self, and direct realization. Critics suggest that the Tulku tradition can sometimes lead to a focus on external authority rather than personal spiritual development. How do we balance the reverence for Tulkus with the need for personal growth and understanding in our spiritual journeys? These debates reflect the diversity of thought within Tibetan Buddhism and the ongoing efforts to reconcile traditional practices with contemporary understandings of Buddhist philosophy. As Tibetan Buddhism continues to evolve and adapt to new contexts, the role and significance of the Tulku tradition will likely continue to be a topic of discussion and reflection. Isn't it fascinating to see how this ancient tradition continues to inspire and challenge us? The role of Tulkus in maintaining and spreading the teachings of compassion and wisdom from the Buddha. Despite these debates and controversies, Tulkus play a vital role in maintaining and spreading the teachings of compassion and wisdom from the Buddha. As recognized spiritual leaders, Tulkus serve as living embodiments of Buddhist principles, providing guidance and inspiration to their followers. Their presence and teachings help preserve the continuity of Tibetan Buddhist traditions and ensure that these teachings remain relevant and accessible to new generations. Isn't it incredible how one individual can have such a profound impact on the preservation and dissemination of spiritual wisdom? Tulkus are often involved in teaching and translating Buddhist texts, leading meditation retreats, and offering guidance on ethical conduct and spiritual practice. They play a crucial role in transmitting the core teachings of Buddhism, such as the Four Noble Truths, the Eightfold Path, and the practice of Mahamudra and Dzogchen. Through their teachings, Tulkus help cultivate a deeper understanding of the nature of the mind, the cultivation of compassion, and the realization of wisdom. What a beautiful way to continue the legacy of the Buddha's teachings. Moreover, Tulkus often serve as bridges between different cultures and traditions, helping adapt Buddhist teachings to new contexts while maintaining their core principles. This adaptability has been particularly important in the spread of Tibetan Buddhism to the West, where Tulkus have introduced new audiences to the transformative power of Buddhist practice and philosophy. By embodying the principles of compassion and wisdom, Tulkus continue to play a crucial role in the global dissemination of Tibetan Buddhism, fostering greater understanding and appreciation of the tradition's rich spiritual heritage. Isn't it inspiring to see how they carry forward such timeless teachings in today's ever-changing world? 9. Future directions for the Tulku tradition, new approaches and innovations within the Tulku tradition to align with the modern world. As Tibetan Buddhism continues to spread across the globe, the Tulku tradition finds itself at a crossroads. How do we preserve such a rich, spiritual heritage while aligning with modern values and realities? It's a challenge that requires creativity, courage, and a deep commitment to the tradition's core principles. One exciting approach has been the integration of science and Buddhism, particularly in psychology and neuroscience. Can you imagine the powerful insights that emerge when ancient wisdom meets modern science? Many Tulkus have engaged in dialogues with scientists to explore how Buddhist meditation practices intersect with modern understandings of the mind. These collaborations have helped demystify aspects of the Tulku tradition, making them more accessible to a broader audience. Isn't it fascinating to see these two worlds coming together to enrich our understanding of the human experience? Another innovation is the increased focus on secular ethics and universal values. Tulkus like the 14th Dalai Lama have emphasized the importance of compassion, empathy, and ethical behavior, regardless of religious affiliation. This approach resonates with many people worldwide, making Tibetan Buddhism more inclusive and relevant to contemporary concerns. It's amazing how these timeless values continue to find new expressions in today's world, don't you think? Technology and social media have also played a transformative role. Imagine reaching people from all corners of the globe with a single click. Many Tulkus have embraced digital platforms to offer teachings, conduct online retreats, and engage in discussions on pressing contemporary issues. This allows them to extend their influence far beyond traditional monastic settings and connect with people from all walks of life. How incredible is it that technology can help keep ancient traditions alive and vibrant in the modern age? The role of young Tulkus in efforts to internationalize Tibetan Buddhism. Young Tulkus are stepping into the spotlight, playing a pivotal role in the internationalization of Tibetan Buddhism. Many of these young leaders have grown up in the West or have been exposed to Western education and culture, giving them a unique perspective on how to bridge the gap between traditional Tibetan practices and modern sensibilities. Isn't it inspiring to see how they are navigating these dual worlds? These young Tulkus often speak multiple languages and are skilled in using digital media to communicate with a global audience. They're also deeply attuned to contemporary issues such as climate change, social justice, and mental health. This awareness allows them to connect with younger generations seeking spiritual guidance relevant to their lives. How wonderful it is to see these leaders using their voices to address the pressing issues of our time. Efforts to internationalize Tibetan Buddhism have also led to the establishment of Buddhist centers and monasteries outside Tibet, in places like India, Nepal, Europe, and North America. These centers serve as hubs for teaching, practice, and cultural exchange, helping spread Tibetan Buddhism and the Tulku tradition to new audiences. It's remarkable to see how these ancient teachings continue to find new homes and flourish worldwide. By embracing these new approaches and innovations, young Tulkus are ensuring the continuity and relevance of the Tulku tradition in the modern world. They are crucial in adapting Tibetan Buddhism to new cultural contexts and engaging with a diverse, global audience. Isn't it exciting to think about the future possibilities for this ancient tradition? the future of the Tulku tradition in the context of global transformation and new spiritual trends. Looking ahead, the future of the Tulku tradition will likely be shaped by several factors, including the ongoing globalization of Tibetan Buddhism, the rise of secularism and skepticism, and the increasing demand for spiritual teachings that are both authentic and accessible. How do we navigate these currents to ensure the Tulku tradition remains vibrant and meaningful? As Tibetan Buddhism continues to spread globally, there will likely be a stronger emphasis on the core teachings and values of Buddhism, such as compassion, wisdom, and ethical conduct. Focusing on these universal principles will help maintain the tradition's relevance in a rapidly changing world and ensure it remains accessible to a diverse audience. Isn't it inspiring to see how these timeless teachings continue to guide us? At the same time, there may be a need for greater transparency and accountability in the recognition and training of Tulkus. As the tradition adapts to new contexts, there will likely be increased scrutiny of the processes and criteria used to identify Tulkus and a greater emphasis on ethical conduct and personal realization. It's a challenging path, but one that offers the opportunity to renew and strengthen the tradition's foundations. Finally, the future of the Tulku tradition will depend on its ability to engage with new spiritual trends and movements. As more people seek spiritual guidance outside traditional religious institutions, there will be opportunities for Tulkus to connect with new audiences and share the teachings of Tibetan Buddhism in innovative and creative ways. Imagine the possibilities for growth and transformation as these teachings reach new hearts and minds. By embracing these opportunities and challenges, the Tulku tradition can continue to thrive in the modern world, offering spiritual guidance and inspiration to people of all backgrounds and beliefs. Isn't it exciting to think about the future of this incredible tradition and the impact it can continue to have? 10. Conclusion. In conclusion, the Tulku tradition is a vital and dynamic aspect of Tibetan Buddhism, with a rich history and profound spiritual significance. Tulkus have played a crucial role in preserving and transmitting the teachings of Tibetan Buddhism, serving as spiritual leaders, teachers, and guides for their communities. They are the torchbearers of a profound spiritual lineage, offering wisdom and guidance to countless individuals on their spiritual journeys. However, the tradition also faces significant challenges in the modern world. Controversies over recognition, cultural and social changes, and the need to adapt to new contexts all pose challenges that require thoughtful reflection and innovation. Despite these obstacles, Tulkus continue to find new ways to engage with their followers, reflecting the adaptability and resilience of Tibetan Buddhism. It's heartening to see how they navigate these complexities with such grace and wisdom. As Tibetan Buddhism continues to spread globally, the Tulku tradition will likely evolve and adapt, maintaining its relevance and accessibility while preserving its core principles and values. By embracing these opportunities and challenges, the Tulku tradition can continue to offer spiritual guidance and inspiration to people of all backgrounds and beliefs, ensuring its continued vitality and significance in the modern world. Isn't it incredible to think about the enduring impact of this tradition and the light it continues to shine on our path?